All right, so today we're diving into something that I think is on a lot of people's minds, with everything going on, finding a way to feel calm,
Yeah.
like genuinely calm in a world that just feels chaotic and overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, especially these days, it's like the news cycle never stops. The demands are coming from every direction.
Right? It's like you can't escape it.
And finding that sense of inner peace, it can feel like a luxury, like something that's just out of reach for most of us.
Right. It's like winning the lottery.
Mm.
Maybe you dream about it, but do you really think it's going to happen?
Exactly.
But what if I told you that it doesn't have to be that way? What if there were actual practical things you could do to actually dial down the stress and tap into a quieter part of yourself?
Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore today.
Yeah.
We've got some really fascinating insights from all sorts of sources. And what they point to is that mindfulness and meditation, these aren't just like esoteric concepts. They're learnable skills.
Right, like anyone can do this.
Anyone can do this, and the benefits are so real and tangible.
Absolutely, and that's what we're really digging into today, right? How incorporating mindfulness and meditation can actually lead to significant shifts in your life.
Mm.
Less stress, more peace, and a real improvement in your overall mental well-being.
Yeah, and when we talk about why you should care, I think it's important to highlight that this isn't just about feeling good in the moment. There's real world implications for this stuff,
Yeah.
improved mental clarity so you can focus better on what matters to you.
Right, like actually getting things done.
Stronger, more fulfilling relationships because you're able to be more present with the people you care about, and a deeper understanding of yourself, like your motivations, your values, what truly drives you.
Right, so this is not just some fluffy self-help stuff.
Not at all. It's about building a more fulfilling life.
Okay, so let's break down the basics. I mean, we hear these terms all the time, but let's start with mindfulness. What is that actually?
So at its core, mindfulness is about paying attention to the present moment and doing it on purpose. It's about being aware of your thoughts, your feelings, the sensations in your body without getting all caught up in judging them or overanalyzing them. You're just observing with an open and accepting attitude.
So it's not about emptying your mind or anything like that.
Right. It's more about acknowledging what's there without getting swept away by it.
Okay. And how does meditation fit into all of this?
Well, meditation is a broader term. It encompasses a lot of different practices, many of which include mindfulness as a key element. It's got deep roots in ancient traditions, especially Buddhism, but it's been adapted and evolved in so many ways.
So if mindfulness is the paying attention, meditation is the how the practice.
Exactly. It gives you a framework to cultivate that mindfulness skill.
Okay, so for someone who's totally new to this, what's a really simple starting point, something they could try today?
So here's something you can do right now, literally right now. Set a timer for 5 minutes, find a quiet spot, and just bring your attention to your breath. Notice the feeling of the air coming in, the gentle pause in the air flowing out.
And that's it.
That's it. Well, almost when your mind wanders, and it will gently guide your attention back to your breath.
So it's about noticing the distraction and coming back to the breath.
Exactly. And even just those few moments of anchoring yourself in the present can be surprisingly powerful. And as you do it more, you might find yourself naturally wanting to extend that time.
Okay, so that's a great starting point. But let's get into some more practical strategies. I know you had some expert tips that can make this whole thing feel a bit less daunting. What's the first one?
So the first one is all about creating a dedicated space. And I know it might sound a little woo-woo, but there's actually a really practical reason for this.
Yeah, I've heard this before, but I've never really understood why it matters.
Yes. So it all comes down to how our minds work. We respond to cues, and by designating a specific area in your home, even if it's just a small corner with a cushion or a comfortable chair, you're basically creating a mental association.
So when you sit down at your desk, your brain's like, okay, time to work.
Exactly. It's the same idea with a meditation space. You're signaling to your brain, okay, time to relax, time to focus inward. It removes some of the mental friction of having to find the perfect spot every time you want to meditate.
That makes sense. It's like setting the stage mentally and physically.
Exactly. And it helps to make it a priority too, this space is just for this.
Okay, tip number 2 is all about consistency. We all know it's important for building any habit, but why is it especially crucial for meditation?
Well, if you think about how our brains learn and adapt, consistency is key. By trying to meditate around the same time each day, you're essentially training your mind. You're establishing a routine so that mindfulness becomes more like an integrated part of your day rather than something you have to force yourself to do.
Right, it becomes more automatic.
Exactly. And if you think about it, learning a new language. Those short, regular practice sessions are way more effective than like one marathon session once a month. It's about building that mental muscle over time.
Okay, consistency, got it. Tip number 3 is about guided meditations. And this is something I think a lot of people can relate to because the thought of just sitting in silence with your thoughts can be kind of intimidating.
It can be really intimidating, and for beginners especially, guided meditations can be a game changer. They provide a structure and a focus for your attention. They often use spoken instructions, imagery, calming sounds to kind of lead you through the process.
So it's like having a coach or a guide.
Yeah, exactly. And the great thing is nowadays there are so many resources available, like tons of apps and online platforms that offer all sorts of guided meditations for different needs, whether it's reducing anxiety, improving sleep, or just cultivating that present moment awareness.
So no matter what you're struggling with, there's probably a guided meditation out there for you.
Most likely, yeah.
Okay, tip number 4 is something I think we all need to hear, and that is embrace imperfection. I know for me personally, if my mind starts racing during meditation, I feel like I'm doing it wrong.
Oh, yeah. I think we all feel that way sometimes, but the truth is achieving a perfectly blank mind during meditation, that's a myth, and honestly, it sets us up for failure.
It's normal for thoughts to pop up.
Absolutely. Our minds are thought-generating machines. That's what
Hmm.
they do. The key is not to fight them or beat yourself up for having them, but to just gently acknowledge them and then redirect your attention back to your chosen anchor, whether that's your breath, a mantra, or whatever the meditation is guiding you to focus on.
So it's more about noticing the thought and gently letting it go.
Exactly. And patience is key here. It's not about perfection, it's about practice.
Yeah.
And the more you practice, the easier it becomes to bring your attention back to the present moment.
Okay, so tip number 5 is about mindful listening, and this one takes us out of the formal sitting practice and into our everyday lives.
Right, because mindfulness isn't just something you do on a cushion, it's something you can bring into every aspect of your life.
So how can we be more mindful when we're listening?
So think about how often we listen with only part of our attention. We're thinking about what we're going to say next, or we're distracted by our phones, or we're just half listening while doing something else.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that.
We all are, and mindful listening is about intentionally bringing your full attention to the sounds around you. So when you're listening to music, really try to notice the different layers, the individual instruments, the emotions that the music evokes. And when you're having a conversation, really focus on what the other person is saying, not just the words, but their tone, their body language.
It's about being present with the whole experience.
Exactly, and it can really deepen our connection with others and with the world around us.
Okay, so we've covered the expert tips. Now let's move on to some outside-the-box ways to incorporate mindfulness into our routines. The first one is mindful walking. I usually think of walking as exercise or just a way to get from point A to point B, but how can we make it more mindful?
Well, instead of letting your mind wander to your to-do list or replaying past events while you walk, try consciously bringing your attention to the physical sensations of walking.
So like feeling your feet on the ground.
Exactly. Notice the feeling of your feet making contact with the ground, the movement in your legs and arms, the way your body feels as it moves through space. Pay attention to the air on your skin, the sounds around you, the sights. Really engage all your senses in the experience of walking.
So it's about turning something we often do on autopilot into a mindful experience.
Exactly. And it can transform a mundane activity into an opportunity for present moment awareness.
Okay, that's really cool. And there's a second outside the box tip is mindful eating. We hear a lot about this, but what does it actually look like in practice?
So mindful eating is basically bringing that same non-judgmental awareness to the experience of eating. So pay attention to the food in front of you, the colors, the aromas, the textures. And as you eat, notice each bite, savor the flavors, chew your food thoroughly.
So it's about slowing down and really being present with the food.
Exactly. And it can actually enhance your enjoyment of the meal, but it can also improve digestion and help you develop a healthier relationship with food because you become more attuned to your body's signals, like when you're actually hungry and when you're full.
Right. It's about listening to your body.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the key figures who've really helped bring mindfulness and meditation to the forefront in the Western world. We mentioned Jon Kabat-Zinn and Thich Nhat Hanh earlier. What makes their contributions so significant?
So Jon Kabat-Zinn, he developed mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR, which is basically a structured program that uses mindfulness techniques to help people cope with stress, pain, and illness.
And this was groundbreaking because
Because it brought mindfulness out of traditional religious contexts and into mainstream healthcare, it made it accessible to people who might not have considered it before.
Right, it became more secular.
Exactly. And then you have Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Zen master, and he's dedicated his life to teaching mindfulness in a really accessible and compassionate way, emphasizing its role in cultivating peace both within ourselves and in the world.
So he brought it to a wider audience.
Exactly. And his teachings and writings have made mindfulness understandable and relatable to a global audience.
So it's really remarkable how their different approaches have both contributed to this widespread interest in mindfulness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so now for our quirky, mind-blowing fact, this segment where we share something that just makes you go, And today, it's all about the brain.
So this is something that always blows my mind. The fact that regular meditation can actually change the structure of your brain, like physically change it.
You kidding?
Nope, it's true. Studies have shown that consistent meditation practice can lead to an increase in gray matter density in certain areas of the brain.
And what do those areas do?
Well, they're the areas associated with memory, self-awareness, emotional regulation.
So it's not just about feeling calmer in the moment, it's about actually strengthening those parts of the brain.
Exactly. It's like a workout for your brain. And the benefits can be seen over time. For example, increased gray matter in the prefrontal cortex that's been linked to improved focus and decision making.
So meditation is basically like a superpower.
Kind of, yeah. It's pretty amazing.
Okay, so as we start to wrap up, what's the main message you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
The main message is that mindfulness and meditation, they're not just about finding temporary relief from stress. They're about cultivating lasting inner peace, building resilience, and enhancing your overall quality of life. And by making these practices a part of your routine, even in small ways, you can experience some pretty profound shifts in how you feel and how you show up in the world.
I love that. And I really want to encourage our listeners to approach this as a personal exploration. There's no right or wrong way to do this experiment. With the tips we've talked about, find what works for you. And remember that even just starting with 5 minutes of focusing on your breath, that's a huge step.
Yeah, and be patient with yourself. Allow for growth. Celebrate those small moments of awareness you cultivate along the way. It's a journey, not a destination.
Absolutely. And as a final thought, I want to leave you with this. Think about your own daily routines, those moments that often feel automatic or even stressful. How might bringing just a little bit of mindfulness into one of those moments, maybe your morning coffee, your commute, or even a challenging conversation, how might that subtly but profoundly change your experience of it?
It's an invitation to explore how present moment attention can reshape your everyday reality.
And on that note, that's a wrap for this deep dive into mindfulness and meditation. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening.